afternoon, Philadelphia Eagles. Before anything else, I just want to thank you all so much for being with me on this journey, supporting our team. I know it hasn't been easy. Every game is a mix of emotions, every conversation, every decision, it all weighs on us. But I truly believe all this effort will be worth it, and soon we'll be celebrating together, because that's what our team is all about. Sweat, or racing heart, anxiety, anger, but also a lot of joy. Green heart. So, if you believe just like I do, make sure to leave a like to support the channel, and if you can, drop a comment down below saying, "Go Birds." I believe. The NFL trade deadline is closing in fast, and all eyes are on the Philadelphia Eagles, with the cutoff coming right after Week 9 and before that Week 10 trip to Lambeau Field to face the Green Bay Packers. The question around the league isn't whether the Eagles will make a move, it's what kind of move Howie Roseman is willing to pull off this time. The team is sitting in a strong position, but this organization isn't built to stay comfortable. Howie wants that third Lombardi trophy, and with the NFC East and the conference itself both wide open, this is the perfect time to strike. The conversation started heating up when ESPN insider Jeremy Fowler released his list of the top 25 players expected to generate trade buzz across the league. And among those names, several stood out as potential fits for the Eagles. We're talking big names: Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals, Rick Woolen from the Seahawks, Mark Andrews from the Ravens, Jermaine Johnson and Michael Carter from the Jets, Arden Key from the Titans, and Cam Taylor-Britt from the Bengals. These are not small-time options. These are game changers, and the Eagles are linked to all of them. Let's start with the one that has Eagles fans buzzing: Trey Hendrickson. The 30-year-old edge rusher has quietly become one of the most consistent defensive weapons in the NFL, putting up back-to-back seasons with 17.5 sacks. He's strong, durable, and flat-out relentless. Fowler reported that the Bengals have no plans to trade him, but interest remains sky-high, with even the 49ers reportedly keeping tabs. If Howie Roseman could somehow pry Hendrickson loose, it would completely transform the Eagles' pass rush, a unit that, frankly, hasn't lived up to its potential. Brandon Graham might be back out of retirement at 37, but expecting him to anchor the edge for 20-plus snaps a game is unrealistic. Nolan Smith's return from IR helps, but it's not enough. The Eagles need a finisher up front, and Hendrickson would be that guy. Then there's Rick Woolen. At 6 feet 4 inches with a 4.26 40, he's the kind of athletic freak that Vic Fangio's defense could unleash. He struggled a bit recently in Seattle, but that has more to do with fit than ability. Reports say he's been on the trade radar for a while because Mike McDonald's system doesn't lean into man coverage, which happens to be Woolen's biggest strength. Pairing him opposite Darius Slay would instantly give the Eagles one of the most physically dominant cornerback duos in the league. Fangio could rotate coverage, disguise pressure, and allow the front seven to be more aggressive, something this defense desperately needs. Now, here's the wild card: Mark Andrews. I know, it's surprising. The idea of trading for a Pro Bowl tight end when you already have Dallas Goedert seems odd at first glance, but if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. Andrews is one of the most complete tight ends in football: strong blocker, elite hands, and a dependable red zone target. The Ravens are sitting at 1-5, and according to Fowler, they might be open to at least listening to offers as they evaluate their veteran core. Andrews is making $11 million in the final year of his deal, and so is Goedert. Both are proven, both are in contract years. The Eagles could be thinking ahead here. If one gets hurt or leaves in free agency, the other could be extended. Imagine two tight end sets with Andrews and Goedert and 12 personnel. It would open up the entire playbook. Then there's Jermaine Johnson from the Jets, a name that's getting real traction. New York isn't desperate to move him, but Fowler suggests they'd rather trade Johnson than Will McDonald. Johnson's got a team-friendly contract and major upside despite coming off an Achilles injury last year. He's young, explosive, and could be that long-term edge rusher opposite Josh Sweat that this defense has been missing. Michael Carter is another name to watch. The slot corner from the Jets has been linked to the Eagles because of his solid coverage ability and experience in nickel formations. At 26, he could step right in and bring stability to a secondary that's been inconsistent at best. His concussion issues have slowed him down, but the talent is still there. And with Cooper Dean potentially moving outside, Carter could fit perfectly in Fangio's rotation. The Titans' Arden Key feels like the kind of veteran move Howie loves. He's not flashy, but he's reliable, with 6.5 sacks last year and a motor that doesn't stop. Tennessee might hold onto him because of injuries elsewhere, but if they do decide to sell, the Eagles should be first in line. Cam Taylor-Britt is another intriguing cornerback option. He was a healthy scratch recently in Cincinnati, and that's usually the first sign a team might be open to dealing a player. With DJ Turner and Dax Hill emerging there, Taylor Britt might welcome a change of scenery. He's still developing, but his physical playstyle fits exactly what the Eagles like in their corners. Here's where things get even more interesting. The NFC East is right there for the taking. The Cowboys are sitting behind the Eagles in the standings, and even though they've been explosive offensively, Philadelphia has the edge after that Week 1 win. Washington is fading fast. The Giants are hanging by a thread, and if the Eagles beat them this weekend, their playoff hopes are done. The Commanders, who went all in on veterans, are crumbling under their own age and inconsistency. The road to the division title is clear, and the NFC as a whole is just as wide open. The 49ers are dealing with injuries. Detroit is talented, but Jared Goff at the Link in December doesn't exactly inspire fear. Seattle's scrappy but inconsistent. Tampa Bay already fell to Philly once even when the Eagles only played their C game. When you line up the conference contenders, there isn't a team you wouldn't take the Eagles against head-to-head. That's why Howie Roseman might see this as the time to double down, make the move that separates a great season from a championship one. If there's one thing Howie's proven, it's that he's never content with good enough. He's built a roster designed for sustained success, but also one that demands constant improvement. With the trade deadline approaching and names like Hendrickson, Woolen, Andrews, and Johnson on the board, the question is no longer whether the Eagles can afford to make a move, it's whether they can afford not to. If I'm Howie Roseman right now, I'm staring at that list of trade targets and weighing the risk versus reward of each name. Trey Hendrickson might be the biggest swing, a veteran with production you can trust, but at a cost that could eat into the team's cap space moving forward. Still, you can't put a price on dominance in the trenches, and Hendrickson brings exactly that. Imagine pairing him next to Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis with Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham rotating off the edge. That would be the kind of defensive front that makes quarterbacks miserable in January. The Eagles could win games on defense alone with that type of pressure. But if we're being realistic, the Bengals probably won't move him while they're still in the AFC North race. That's where a player like Jermaine Johnson becomes a lot more interesting. He's younger, cheaper, and has that hunger of a guy trying to prove himself post-injury. The Jets are a team in flux. Their defense is elite, but their offense can't sustain drives. If they're offered the right pick, especially considering Johnson's contract timeline, they might be tempted. And you know Howie, he loves trading for guys with long-term upside, not just rentals. This could be another mid-season gem, similar to the moves that helped build the Super Bowl runs in years past. Now, Rick Woolen might be the most fascinating of all. We all know the Eagles' secondary has been tested this season. Injuries, inconsistency, and missed assignments have left the defense vulnerable against teams that spread the field. Fangio's system depends heavily on corners who can win one-on-one battles and allow safeties to disguise coverage. Woolen's blend of size, length, and speed makes him tailor-made for that role. If he can return to his 2022 form, when he tied for the league lead in interceptions, he could become the defensive X-factor that helps this team finally tighten up in coverage. That move alone could make the Eagles' defense feel whole again. And then, there's the wild card of all wild cards, Mark Andrews. You can just picture the reaction across the NFL of how he pulled this one off. 2 Pro Bowl tight ends in the same offense? It sounds outrageous until you remember how this team has thrived on versatility. Think back to when the Patriots used Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez in those deadly 2 tight end sets. It created chaos for opposing defenses. With Andrews and Dallas Goedert, Nick Sirianni could do the same. It would force defenses into impossible decisions, stack the box to stop the run and risk both tight ends exploiting mismatches, or drop into coverage and let Jalen Hurts and the offensive line dominate on the ground. If you're wondering whether it's realistic, keep in mind that the Ravens' struggles might open the door for some bold decisions. Andrews is still one of the best at his position, but Baltimore might be retooling for the future. That gives Howie a window, one that might not stay open for long. But all of these trade scenarios come back to one central question. How far are the Eagles willing to go this season? Because right now, the door to the NFC is wide open. The Cowboys, for all their firepower, have been inconsistent. The 49ers are banged up. The Lions have talent but are still unproven in playoff-level games. Seattle is feisty, yes, but not unbeatable. When you look at the Eagles' remaining schedule, with the Giants, Commanders, and Cowboys still ahead, every single game feels like an opportunity to separate from the pack. This is the kind of season that demands aggression. It's not just about winning the division, it's about building momentum toward February. You can see the potential when this team is firing on all cylinders. Jalen Hurts commanding the offense with precision, A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith torching defenses, the offensive line wearing opponents down down. But if the Eagles can strengthen the defense at the deadline, if they can add one or two key pieces to that front seven or the secondary, they'll become a complete, championship-caliber unit again. That's the beauty of how this organization is run. There's no complacency. Howie Roseman never waits for problems to fix themselves. He attacks them. Just look at the Brandon Graham signing. It wasn't about nostalgia. It was about leadership, depth, and setting the tone in the locker room. But as much as that move helps, it can't be the last. The Eagles need fresh energy on defense, and the trade deadline is where that opportunity lies. Imagine the message a big trade would send to the locker room. It tells everyone, from the veterans to the rookies, that this front office is all in, that they believe this team can go back to the Super Bowl and finish what they couldn't last time. You can feel it around the league. Teams are scared of the Eagles when they're motivated, and this would be the kind of move that reignites that fire. Now, let's be real. Trades like these aren't easy to pull off. They take the right deal, the right fit, and the right timing. But Howie has made a career out of pulling off what others think can't be done. He's been the master of the mid-season swing that changes everything, the move that defines the second half of the year. So, as the clock ticks toward that November 4th deadline, every Eagles fan should be watching closely, because something's coming. And that brings us to the million-dollar question for the fan base. If Howie Roseman could only make one move before the deadline, one trade that could define the rest of the season, who do you want it to be? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which player you think pushes this roster over the top. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the other videos on the screen for full breakdowns and analysis on all things Eagles. Because at the end of the day, this is what it's all about, maximizing the window while you have it. You've got Jalen Hurts in his prime, a loaded offensive core with A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, and a defense filled with young anchors like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. This isn't a rebuild, it's a reload. Every single decision Howie makes right now could determine whether the Eagles lift another Lombardi or watch another team take their place. Think about what we've seen from this group so far. Even when they're not perfect,